Hello Capricorn, the zodiac sign of discipline and enduring inner strength. But I have to ask you this, have you ever felt like a recent decision wasn't entirely yours? As if someone was whispering behind your back, adjusting each step you take not to help you but to control you? If your mind has been feeling tangled, your heartbeat a little off, or you've been second-guessing things you once felt so certain about, then I want you to stay. Because what I'm about to say will speak directly to that part of your energy that's being manipulated. The week from May 19 to May 25 is not just another ordinary week. The Sun leaves Taurus and moves into Gemini. Saturn, your ruling planet, officially enters Aries. And Mercury is preparing to connect with the cerebral zone of Gemini, stirring up everything you believe to be true. Amid that chaos, someone reappears. Someone whose name or shadow keeps replaying in your mind. But they didn't return with love, they came with an invisible thread to pull you back into that familiar state of unrest where you once felt small and easy to control. You're walking through a phase where everything that once felt familiar suddenly feels distant. Your thoughts aren't as clear as they used to be. Things you were once certain of now make you hesitate. People who once brought you peace now leave behind a heavy, unnameable feeling. And then you begin to wonder, are these thoughts in your head even yours anymore? This isn't your imagination. It's the result of an astrological blueprint that's shaking your inner world. The Sun and Mercury move into Gemini, where thoughts collide like swirling winds. At the same time, Saturn, Capricorn's ruling planet, enters Aries, a place where hesitation has no space. Everything you've tried to avoid is being pulled into the light. In that chaos, someone, or the energetic echo of them, is quietly resurfacing. They don't need to be named. It only takes a passing post, an old song, or a familiar glance for your mind to lose its rhythm. Capricorn always believes in being strong. But manipulation doesn't always come from outside. It comes from what you've held onto too tightly and forgot to release. That person may be gone, but they're still alive in your reflexes. In the moments you go silent, hold tension, or instinctively pull back. That's not you. That's the imprint of them. You see it in the smallest things, pausing before signing a contract, hesitating when you want to open up, sleepless nights, financial confusion. You think it's coincidence, but it's not. It's your body reacting in place of your heart, because that person still occupies your safe zone. You can't live freely if part of you still saves space for the one who made you fear abandonment. It's not enough to delete their name from your contacts. You have to unplug them from the emotional outlet you've been using to charge your dreams. You can't move forward if the power source is still being drained by an old memory. This week, the universe will ask you to choose. Keep that person as a protective habit, or choose yourself with all the uncertainty, but with freedom. You can't keep pretending you don't hear your breath tighten every time they cross your mind. And if you're still unsure, ask yourself this: am I living my own life or quietly existing just so I don't disturb someone who already left? They don't need to say hurtful things or control you in obvious ways. This person is usually intelligent, composed, and exceptionally skilled at making you feel like you're the one in the wrong for even thinking about leaving. They don't make you cry, but they make you laugh in self-defense. They don't insult you, but they always leave you feeling not quite good enough. They may have once loved you, helped you, even listened when no one else did, but somehow they taught you to associate love with burden. You became used to tensing up every time you were around them, always proving, always suppressing, always trying to be just enough so they wouldn't withdraw. This is the kind of person who makes you exceptional, but only in a state of anxiety, strong but never at peace. You keep moving forward, yet always on edge, because every form of validation from them comes with conditions. They love you as long as you don't change. They support you as long as you stay within their frame. Astrology calls this the mark of Saturn opposing Mercury, or the moon squaring Chiron, dynamics where you feel you need someone to survive even when you know they are your limit. And ironically, they rarely mean to harm you, but they exist as a checkpoint standing between you and your freedom. You no longer resent them, but you also haven't truly forgiven them because you've never dared to name what they actually did. They pulled you away from yourself. They didn't stop you from moving forward. They just held up a distorted mirror, one that made you doubt your own reflection. And the danger is, you're still looking into that mirror every day, still filtering your emotions, still saying what others want to hear, still avoiding real conversations because you once learned that telling the truth might make someone leave. But here's the truth. If a single honest sentence is enough to make someone walk away, then maybe they never stayed out of love, but out of control. Not every breakdown is a loss. Some cracks appear only so you can finally look within, where the strong exterior you've worn for so long has kept things hidden. The universe isn't trying to destroy you. It's removing what has expired so you can reclaim your power. And sometimes that reclamation doesn't come in light, but through a pain big enough to make you stop and ask, who am I really living for? Capricorn is the sign of endurance. You stay until the last minute. You carry, you hold, even when no one else remains. But in that last minute, who are you really holding on for? For them? Or because you're afraid that without something to carry, you won't know who you are? You're not afraid of losing them. You're afraid of losing the self that was built around the struggle. But the universe won't let you stay in that role forever. Now with Saturn, your ruling planet, entering Aries, everything is being pulled out of the waiting zone. Aries doesn't wait for readiness. It simply asks, can you stand alone without needing anyone's permission to follow what you know is right? This is your test now, to stop doing the right thing for others and start doing the right thing for you. Maybe you once gave everything to a relationship, changed version after version of yourself just to keep something called connection. But if that bond makes you shrink every time you want to expand, if it makes you hold back or calculate every time you speak, then that's not love. That's a temporary space you're renting and mistaking for home. True peace doesn't make you shrink. It opens you up. It doesn't make you hold your breath. It makes you want to breathe deeper. And this time, the universe is quietly opening a door for you. No noise, no promises, just an invitation back to yourself. And sometimes, that's the place you left a long time ago. You've carried the weight of the world just so no one would see you falling apart, but this time, be the first one to hold yourself. You don't need anyone's approval to live in truth. You don't need pain to prove that your love was real. From this moment on, say to yourself, I will no longer let old pain define my future. And if you're scared, be scared. If you need to cry, cry. But don't go back. Because if you're brave enough to sit with your emotions today, then you're already brave enough to walk through the door the universe has quietly opened just for you. Realizing is one thing, but letting go, that's something else. Because sometimes it's not love that makes you hold on. It's the fear of not knowing who you are anymore if you're not holding it all together for someone else. Some connections can't be untangled with logic because they don't live in your mind. They live in your lower belly, your throat, the places where you've swallowed your truth so many times. Emotions you never dared to speak are still hibernating there, and if you don't consciously release them, they'll continue to shape your behavior, even while you think you've already started over. Capricorn, look closely. How many times were you about to change jobs, sign a deal, or pivot your path? But all it took was one message, a glance, or a casual question from that person, and you hesitated. Not because they stopped you, but because you're still running an internal operating system they installed. You're not unsure because your decision is wrong. You're unsure because you're afraid. If you stop asking for their approval in your head, will you still feel valid? And that's the deepest kind of manipulation, when no one needs to control you anymore, because now you do it to yourself. You don't hate them, but you haven't fully forgiven either because you've never dared to call what they did by its real name. They made you walk away from yourself, not through cruelty, but through looks, prolonged silence, and only offering approval when you played the version of yourself they liked. Manipulation isn't always control. Sometimes it's confusion. It's when you start second-guessing your own emotions, when you begin justifying someone else's behavior more than you listen to your own. When every time you want to express something, you rehearse it 3 times in your mind just to make sure. They don't walk away. And you know what? If one honest sentence is enough to make someone leave, They were never staying for love. They stayed for control. You think you're stalling because the timing isn't right, but the truth is, you're waiting for permission, not from your boss, not from the market, but from someone in your past, someone you no longer speak to, yet who still holds influence over how you define your worth. Capricorn, you're brilliant with logic, but you're also brilliant at talking yourself out of progress with reasons that sound logical. Like, I need to study a bit more, the economy's not stable, or maybe I'm not experienced enough to ask for that salary yet. But let me ask you this. If that person called tomorrow and said, I'm proud of you, would you still feel the need to prepare? This is the most dangerous kind of manipulation, the invisible kind. It makes you believe you're being cautious, when in fact, you're still seeking approval from someone who left your journey a long time ago. And here's the irony. You were born under a sign that was built to build empires, yet you're building yours out of the fear of losing a past connection, not from trust in your own power. Your money isn't being blocked by the market. It's being blocked by a quiet belief that if you rise too high, you'll be left behind. You don't spend because you're afraid of being seen as wasteful. You don't raise your prices because you fear judgment. You don't scale your vision because no one's there to grow it with you. But Capricorn, Saturn in Aries isn't letting you carry everything alone anymore. It's asking you to act, even if no one's clapping. You don't need people to understand, approve, or catch up. You only need to know where you stand, and that your value is ready to be lived out loud. You were once programmed to believe that your worth was tied to how much you could sacrifice. But now, you're here to learn a new truth. Your value lives in your ability to decide without bargaining yourself away to feel accepted. So if this week brings an opportunity, a new offer, a bigger number, don't step back. Ask yourself this instead. Am I saying no because I'm not ready, or because some part of me is still asking for permission from someone who's no longer here? After everything, you begin to realize some of the things you thought were instinct were really just survival reflexes. Reflexes you developed to survive in a relationship that made you afraid to be fully yourself. You used to call that love. You called shrinking maturity. You called silence grace. But now, you're starting to see clearly. You don't need to make yourself smaller just to fit inside someone else's comfort zone. You don't need someone who stays out of obligation. You need someone who chooses to stay every day because they see your light and they're not afraid of how brightly it shines. Someone who doesn't make you guess, who doesn't make you perform just to feel safe, who doesn't use silence as a reward or punishment, but someone who simply shows up when you're strong, when you're joyful, and even when you're unsure. And it's not just in love. In your work, you've made yourself smaller to be accepted. With money, you've said, it's okay when people offered less than you were worth. But Capricorn, your worth doesn't need to be loved to exist. It needs you to stand up, place a hand on your chest and say, I will no longer discount my energy just to maintain a connection that isn't clear. You are entering a chapter where everything that's been unclear will be brought into the light. And if someone starts pulling away just as you begin to live more truthfully, remember this, they're not leaving because you're wrong. They're leaving because you're no longer easy to control. When that happens, don't beg, don't try to explain. Just say to yourself, I choose myself, and this time I don't need anyone to understand that for me to keep going. You've been through enough to know this. Freedom isn't a destination, it's a choice, repeated every day in the smallest decisions when no one else is pulling the strings behind you. It's when you name your worth without attaching an explanation, when you place your hand over your heart and say, I don't need permission to live in alignment with my own value. Capricorn, you weren't born to live a life of tiptoeing, you were born to lead, but not through exhaustion anymore. You were made to lead with clarity, with presence, without dimming your own light just to keep someone close who's no longer vibrating at your frequency. And if someone once made you believe you were too much, too distant, too ambitious, maybe they were just never big enough to walk beside a soul that was still becoming. You don't need to shrink yourself to fit the mold someone else created for you. You only need to stand in your truth, and the right people will see you, without needing you to be softer, smaller, or more digestible. From this moment on, if you have to choose the path where you're there at the beginning, the middle, and the end. Not because it's the easiest path, but because it's the only one where you don't lose yourself along the way. The universe doesn't need you to be sure. It just needs you to move without looking down. If something in this video touched you, even just one sentence, leave a sign. Maybe it's a line you want to share. Maybe it's an angel number that just popped into your mind. Or maybe it's simply the name of someone you're finally ready to release, even if you don't need to say why. What you write down isn't just a message for yourself. It becomes a thread of light, one that someone else, somewhere in the world, might read and suddenly feel less alone. This isn't a channel that speaks to you, it's a space for all of us to come back home to ourselves. And if you want to stay in this frequency a little longer, don't forget to subscribe, not for the algorithm, but so the universe has a doorway to bring you back whenever you need it most. And now, if you're ready, type these words beneath this video. I choose myself. And this time, I'm not giving up. I'm here, and so is the universe. We're listening.